thank you for your interest in this activity, where we will be stretching our minds and freeing ourselves from any fears, limitations, or any of the resistance we have in our thought processes around bringing in our desires. So it's important to note that this is an activity that will be working with our perspective. So as we stretch and change our perspective in order to free ourselves, it's also important to note that some of the perspectives we have are there because they are part of a coping mechanism. A coping mechanism which is there in order to protect us from some sort of fear or pain that we were not fully capable of processing through at the time we experienced it initially. Therefore, it's possible that the perspective we hold is holding us away from feeling a pain. And in that case, there may be resistance to even changing it. And this process can also help us work through and find where that resistance is. So it's not that we shouldn't proceed, but I do want to note that it's important to take yourself through this process, meaning if feelings are arising, it's very appropriate to stop the video, to stop the activity, and be present with your emotion. Accept that it exists. Don't brush it off. No matter what it is, even if it doesn't make sense logically anymore, it's really, really important to be with it. Imagine if that part of you were a 5-year-old child. Maybe the 5-year-old child's plea does not make sense logically to us, but it doesn't mean that we are not going to take the time to be present with a fearful or crying child. So please treat yourself very kindly through this process and take note if any emotions are there. It's important not to brush them aside or to bypass them with this procedure. You'll know when you check in with yourself. So really be comfortable with knowing yourself, knowing what's right for you, trusting your intuition. And if you do get stuck on something, reach out for help. Okay? It's not going to be a difficult process for you, but I just want to caution us against bypassing any emotion with this particular activity. Okay? We start the activity by making 2 lists. The first list is going to be of items that you fear or feel limited by. And the next list is going to be items that you desire but don't have. Things that you want really bad but don't have. So within these 2 lists, we'll find that the fears and limitations are obviously things that we're going to want to work through because we are limited by them. And when we have a desire that we don't have manifested yet, then we know that there's resistance to it. We're not lined up to it in our field. And this activity will help us look for the thing that is actually holding us in the limited view, in the resistance from lining up with our desire. So, as we proceed, remember, just kind of relax. You want to be in a meditative state, a state where you're ready to really be open and honest with yourself, to let yourself be vulnerable enough to see certain things within yourself. You're only going to have to pick one thing at a time to do from your list. So choose the thing that's right in front of you, Maybe it'll be the first thing that you put on your list. Maybe not. I do want to suggest that any of our desires that we go ahead and clear the energy on to manifest be done with the consideration for the highest good of all. I think it's really important to be very responsible with our manifestations, and not just our manifestations, but with our thoughts, with what we say, with the story we're telling. And the reason is because these are real things that you are creating. And if your intention is not for the win-win-win, to make sure that it's in the highest good of yourself and all, then the consequences of proceeding with those things might not be very good or worth it. And I won't judge you for it, but I certainly would advise against doing anything that would mess with anyone's free will or harm anyone or put roadblocks in someone's way. That's what we call black magic, and anything like that is always going to backfire. Okay? So, by making the list of your fears and limitations, you're accepting those as your fears and limitations. By making the list of your desires that you haven't lined up with yet, you are acknowledging your desires. Okay? So that is an important first step. Of course, you can adapt this process to make it your own, and I suggest that you do that in any way that you see possible or appropriate for yourself. But I'm explaining that that's the first step and what it does. So even if you were to get really good at this process and doing it in your head later on, you wouldn't have to work from a list as long as you were doing that first step of acknowledging the item that you were going to look at, right? So once you acknowledge it, you accept that it exists, right? You accept your fear, you accept your limitation, you accept your desire. That's really important as well. The list is letting you own them as part of your reality at this moment. Okay? It doesn't mean that it will always be that way. It's just a recognition of the perspective that you're currently in when you start. So my first slide talks about fears and limitations on one side of the list, and then things you really want but still don't have on the other. Those are the lists we talk about. We talked about the purpose of that. Then for each item on the list, ask the following questions repeatedly. So the questions are, what would be so bad about that? And what if, fill in the blank. You'll notice that I said, ask the following questions repeatedly. And the reason I said that is because when you get an answer to the question the first time you ask, you're going to ask the question again, and again, and again. And you'll just have to feel your way into a more core energy or belief or resistance that is associated with this energy, okay? These two questions that we're using are specifically designed to break us out of the limitation of the program we operate under. The perspectives we use to navigate life are defined by the experiences we've had, the things we've learned, the wisdom we've gained, the fears that we've adopted or lodged within us. And some of this is even pushed to our subconscious, where we're not readily aware of what we're operating by or why, because at some point it became so repetitious that we put it in our subconscious as part of the operating system that we don't have to be aware of. Like breathing. We don't have to think about breathing, and it just happens. So the operating system that we're using to navigate life from day to day is what we see our life as. Our life is a holographic output of our programming, of our perspective, of our conscious beliefs, of our wisdom, our knowledge, and our subconscious beliefs, our fears, and our limitations. It makes up our life. If you look outside of yourself at the life that you're living, it will show you what your beliefs are. Therefore, when you are aware of your fears, you're aware of them because when you encounter that in your life, you feel the fear. When you are aware of your limitations, you know that because you've attempted something and felt unable to do it and recognized that there was a limitation that you had there. Or if you really wanted something and you don't have it, you've noticed that. You've noticed that you cannot line up with it for whatever reason. Outside of our programming, limitless possibilities. Limitless possibilities exist outside of our programming. So these questions are designed to allow us to break out of this programming, to allow our minds to see another possibility. And that is the purpose and design of this activity. Simply that, to expand our awareness around what is possible for us. The question, what would be so bad about that, comes from Teal Swan's video, How to Find Your Core Belief. This is something I picked up many years ago and have been using with myself and people that I assist to find a core belief that is supporting how I'm operating in any given situation. Once you find a core belief, you can then change the belief. So if you find a core belief that is obviously limiting you, then it's useful to have questioned yourself to find it so that you can make the changes. The question, what if, comes from my high school English teacher. And she uses this question to prompt students into creative writing. Sometimes the student's mind is very linear and only able to reach for experiences that they have already had. So this what if question invites us to the limitless possibilities that actually exist outside of our known. I found that when I use this what if question, it can sometimes even reveal fears that I wasn't aware of holding. Then I can use the other question on the fears that I uncover, like what would be so bad about that? When I uncover my core belief, I can use the question what if to question that belief. And so these questions can be used on the topic both ways. I suggest using both questions on each item from the list to allow you to loosen your mind around anything that feels stuck, anything that feels too defined, anything that feels like a limitation or a fear. Because this nice circle is our operating system, and it's designed to guide us through life with the perspectives that we've adopted, sometimes we can find there is resistance to questioning it within ourselves. These questions can help us push through if we are gentle with ourselves through the process. So, I have used 2 items from my list in order to demonstrate the process of using these questions to break out of that circle that I'm in. And I've been very candid with sharing some of these fears or desires that I have. And considering that I've worked through them now, it feels pretty easy to do. So when you first work through these things, it can feel really vulnerable, and therefore I do suggest you doing it by yourself, or if you are with somebody else or a group, that you make sure you feel comfortable and that you're able to be honest with yourself throughout the process. Okay, now I'm going to share with you the demonstration of me using these questions to free myself. The first thing we'll look at is an item from my fears. I discovered that I have a fear. I realized that I have a fear of commitment. I've realized this when I've been invited certain places way ahead of time, and I don't feel comfortable committing myself to the obligation. I've noticed it, and just in retrospect, looking at my last relationship was which was like 3 years ago, which is another clue that I have fear of commitment. But in looking at that relationship, I realized that even though I was so-called committed in that relationship, I didn't, cheat, and I felt loyal. I realized that the reason why I could do that was because he wasn't loyal and he wasn't committed. And so in my mind, it was like I had an out because he didn't live up to my standard. He said he was going to. He kept promising that he would, but he just kept not doing it. So in my mind, somewhere, my fear of commitment was not triggered by him because I felt I have an out because he's not even doing, or he's not even who he says he is. So I could stay, and I ended up staying a long time just based on that dynamic. So that was interesting to me to find that hidden fear of commitment within my own commitment that I had made. It was like that commitment had a loophole. So I was able to stay in it. Yeah, so I am able to make appointments with clients, and I am able to schedule events. So it doesn't come up with everything. If it's my children, it's more like my social freedoms. It's my freedom. It's my social freedoms. And with my freedom, I do have a priority to my family. So it's easy for me to commit to those things. And I do have a priority to my business, my clients, or my dedication to doing a good job for my clients. And so I am able to commit there. But in general, I couldn't even imagine myself getting into a relationship very easily. So let's ask this question. Hypothetically, I've been dating a guy for 3 months. He seems to really like me. Getting along great. Seems like is devote time to our relationship, is honest, coming, isn't dating anyone else, is wanting to take our dating more seriously and date exclusively, and perhaps even work towards a more committed relationship. Now, on the one hand, this is really the only kind of guy I would entertain. But on the other hand, I want to address the fear in me that I know is there, because I don't want this fear to hold me back. If I do find myself in a situation with a guy who seems worth getting to know on a deeper level, So he asks me to, let's say, move in. I would have to commit to this one guy. What would be so bad about that? Now, I don't feel the fear right now when I'm doing this, so I guess I kind of worked through this already, but I'm just going to show you. I feel like I should start again and explain the whole process without all the ooh and ahhing and commentary, but this is how it comes out with me, right? So I'm just a human, right? Oh, whenever I say that, it reminds me of this one time I was doing a reading, and this little girl was with her mom, who I was doing a reading for, and the little girl was jumping up and down and not really sitting still. She was like 3 years old or something, and the mom was getting a little angry or a little frustrated and more stern, and saying telling the little girl to sit down. And the little girl goes, "I'm just a human." I was like, oh yeah, she's just a human. Anyways, it was a great memory. So, see how my ego is trying to avoid even going for the pain? So, it's actually kind of good that happened, because that's what our egos do. Our ego has developed a coping mechanism in order to avoid us having to look at this fear or feel the pain associated with it. So we will tend to distract ourselves when we're doing this process. So make sure you rein yourself back in, as I am going to do now. So I'm being faced with an invitation to move in with a guy, hypothetically, and Maybe that's why I can't feel the pain of or the fear of it, because it's hypothetical. So bad about that. What if he's not the one? Okay, so then I ask the question again. Okay, what if he's not the one? What would be so bad about that? Then I would be stuck. And then I would say, well, you would be stuck then. What would be so bad about that? Then I would have to hurt his feelings to end it. Okay, so you'd have to hurt someone's feelings to end the relationship that you decided was not a good match for you. What would be so bad about that? I don't want to hurt people. You don't want to hurt people. What would be so bad about hurting people? What would be so bad about hurting people? It goes against my values. What would be so bad about going against your values? My values are who I am. So your values are who you are is my core belief. My values are who I am is my core belief, because I couldn't ask that question again, right? What would be so bad about my values being who I am? Apparently I wouldn't be able to break up with somebody that I needed to break up with, right? So if it brings me right back, then I know that I've completed that loop of energy. So I can see that the core of why I'm afraid to commit is because my values are who I am. And you know what one of my biggest values is freedom. So because I've defined myself as my values, and I've created a problem for myself here, and I can see already the solution, right, by doing this. I can see that in actuality, if I were to move in with somebody, that's an experience that I'm having with this person. And an experience is not something that is going to require me to violate my boundaries. Violate my values, because my values will be protected by my boundaries. So I would simply have to have a conversation with this person ahead of time, saying, well, I don't want to end up hurting each other, so let's date for a while longer, maybe another 3 months, maybe another 6 months, and let's really make sure that we know each other. Maybe we can have some more sleepovers and find out what it's like to be in each other's presence for that much time. Maybe we can do a trial run. Maybe we can take turns staying with each other for a month. You know, I would kind of do it like that, because that would kind of alleviate this issue that I've created in my mind around my value being who I am, and my value being tied to not wanting to hurt someone when, you know, sometimes people are hurt. Being in my integrity would be to honor myself and my priority, which is my freedom. And I want to take note that during the process of doing this, I did uncover a belief within myself, which is that I equate myself as my values. And so that is an important piece of information for me to work within myself, right? I've noted that, and this is me later on doing my editing, and I just wanted to add in that I took note of that piece of information because it's important for me to look at that within myself, right? We uncovered a core belief that I have in myself as part of my operating system, and in doing so, I enabled myself to free myself from a limitation that I had on myself. So in actuality, my values are kind of like my strengths and my weaknesses. They can change at any time. My values is what I place value on, what I find important to me in life, and of course that's going to change over time. In actuality, the reason that I don't want to hurt people is due to my compassion. It's due to my heart, right? It's due to my being a member of humanity that cares. So I don't have to limit myself with the idea that I can't operate and go through life and have experiences where I would need to apply my compassion. Because I am a compassionate person, of course I can have these experiences. And it's wonderful to be able to find a limiting belief within myself and free myself from it. So I wanted to note that because I want to make sure that we all know that this process is meant to uncover things about ourselves. These are little nuggets of information that are so important to us in just really knowing ourselves, right? Any belief that we uncover that is limiting us can be changed. So anything that you come across, it's important to take note when it's something that's not serving you. Really want but still don't have. Oh, I know which one I'm going to use for this. It's basically going to be the same procedure, but this time I'm going to start with what if. Okay, so I would really like my car fixed. I would really like my car fixed. So my car is in need of repairs and has been for quite some time. I have not got my car fixed because I have found that I have some sort of PTSD around putting my car into the shop. Because I've kind of had really bad experiences with putting my car into the shop. And so I know I have fears around it, and I haven't been able to make the leap. I've just been kind of avoiding it, dancing around it. I noticed that even when I had the financial means to do it, that I sabotaged myself a little bit and didn't, just so that I wouldn't do it. So I know that there's a fear around this. So things I really want but still don't have. I want my car to be fixed. And what if my car was fixed? Well, then I could drive without worrying. I could get to where I need to go. I could be there for my children when they need me, which it's a priority for me, but I think sometimes it's been nice to be able to say no when I couldn't drive because the ask was a bit too much, and it served as a boundary for me as well. I think that's one thing that I can take into consideration for that. So what if my car was fixed? Then I wouldn't have anything to worry about anymore. I would feel really good. I would feel really comfortable. I feel like I would really feel like I accomplished something by being finally responsible and able enough to have it done. I would no longer have this little niggling fear about needing to get it done. Okay, so what if I put my car into the mechanic and they tell me that I'm gonna need a lot more money than I have to fix it? Well, I guess I could tell them that I need to tow it back to my house until I save money, and then I could just work on saving the money. That would be okay. What if I bring my car to the mechanic to get it fixed, and the mechanic causes more damage, but doesn't even say so? So if I get my car back more damaged, yeah, I really fear this. This is one of my major fears, and I feel like, what if? Well, I guess I would be sad. I don't know if I would have it in me to do the court kind of route to get compensation, or to get them to own up to it, or anything like that, because I just don't have that in me. I don't have a lot of trust for the judicial system. And this is probably one of the major things, right? It's because I have a lack of recourse for if something went wrong, because I don't feel comfortable or trusting of the system that is in place that would so-called protect me from anything like that happening. So that's one thing. So what if I just decided to only take my car to a reputable dealer to have it fixed? And then there's another issue, because it's well, the dealerships have been actually the worst for me. In dealing with the dealerships, I have been not treated fairly and have sort of felt like there were shady things happening, and the cost was excessive. Okay, so what if I hold out for the suggestion of a mechanic that somebody I encounter has suggested to me as someone that they really trust? Okay, this feels like a reasonable option. I feel like I'm still taking a chance, but maybe I could hold out and get some multiple suggestions, and maybe if there were some overlapping and someone had a really good reputation or a lot of people suggested them, maybe then I would feel good about it. What if I learned to do the repairs myself? Well, I have looked into that, and I would, but I know the tools that I would need for the brake job are quite costly, and I know that it's a hard job as well, so I'm just not sure about doing that, like learning from YouTube and stuff. And as far as like the other work that needs to be done, I think I will do some of it. Like my muffler needs to be welded, but I think I can put it back on myself if it is welded. That's basically it. And then there's my bumper is cracked, and I fixed that with the plastic welder my sister said she has. So what if I put it off and don't take care of this issue until later? Well, then I have to continue to drive to the grocery store on a wing and a prayer. I feel limited on where I can travel and when. Bothered by running my car in the state that it's in. Like, I feel it's not really fair to my car. Okay, so I want to look at some of the fears that I've identified now. So I remember that one of the fears I identified is that what if my car was basically ruined by the mechanics? Now I'm going to ask the question, what would be so bad about that? What would be so bad about it if my car was ruined by the mechanics? I'd be without a car. Okay? And what would be so bad about being without a car? Well, I'd have to depend on other people. And what would be so bad about depending on other people? There's no one to depend on. I don't have anyone to depend on. Okay, so right there. It's kind of the same problem, right? It's like I don't feel safe depending on the mechanic because I don't feel like I have anyone to depend on. I didn't feel like I had the recourse covered to depend on, and I don't feel like I have something to cover me if something were to happen, because I don't have anyone I could ask for help. So there we have it. You can see how there's a fear on every side of this topic. That's why I've put it off. And I haven't actually looked into this one very deeply at all yet. So this is really genuine how I'm working through it right now with you all as an example on how to use these questions. So let's see what else I can do. So I know that my core issue is that I can't depend on someone. So is it true? Let's go to what would be so bad about that if I can't depend on anyone. Okay. What would be so bad about it if I cannot depend on anyone? Well, that just means I'll have to walk to the grocery store and walk to town to pay my bills. I could still work from home, so it would just be for groceries and paying bills, and I mean, I could survive for sure if I had to walk. It would be 10 miles round trip. So 10 miles in a day might take me the whole day, but I could do it for sure. And we are coming into winter, so what would be so bad about doing the 10-mile trip round in winter? Nothing really. I have a winter coat, I have scarves, I have boots, and I would just devote a time slot to it. So I could do it. I could survive. Like, it will not take me out to take this risk. Yeah, that's what I needed to know. Right? That's what I needed to know to create the balance in this fear that I have. Because if I stopped at, I just don't have anyone to depend on and I would need to depend on someone, then I could just have taken myself out right there and just said, well, what are you going to do then? But no, I went further, and I kind of like took it down to the nitty-gritty bare, you know, like I could actually survive. And if honestly, if life, what if I was in this situation where I was without transportation and faced with the task of walking to town to pay my bills and to go to the grocery store. I think what if is I would do it. What if I was faced with that? I would guess that the universe was allowing me to see how much character I have and helping me get some extra exercise. And who knows who I would meet if someone stopped to offer me a ride. Maybe someone who was very important to my life. You never know. Like, what are the possibilities that exist within the space of me being without a vehicle? It's actually a lot more than just like terribleness or like poor me or you know, I'm a victim. It's actually like, okay, so the universe is opening a different doorway for me to go through. I have to go through because I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to just lay down, you know, and I'm going to go through it and see, you know, what if is, I don't know yet, but it could be something great. What if is, I don't know yet, but maybe I'll find that I really, really like walking in the cold, brisk winter. What if is maybe I'll find that, you know, I happen to get picked up for a ride by someone who knows a great mechanic who can fix the problem that the other mechanic made. Like anything is possible from that space. Okay, so in fact, as I say this, can you see how I kind of get excited about the possibilities that could be opened up for me if this were to happen? And now that issue is no longer going to hold me back. Ready to tackle that because I've balanced out the energy with these questions. So I think this is a really effective activity. And also, like, I don't feel afraid of making commitment because I trust myself to have the conversations and to be discerning enough on the topics that I would need to be in order to make any decision that I would make in that kind of experience that I would be willing to have. I like this. If you have any questions about this process that I've just demonstrated to you, feel free to leave that in the comments or email me. What you see on the screen here is my Fair Relating Reflection deck. And I just kind of left it there in this little scene of rocks because it's a great deck. I'm getting lots of good feedback about it, and it's available on my website. It's a handmade deck, so it is infused with the energy of my intention, which is to be very balanced in the way we relate with each other. And that balanced way of relating eliminates war, and eliminates power struggles, it eliminates victim, savior, narcissism. It is a tool to help transition from an old paradigm, an old way of relating that involved those things, to a new way of relating which allows for the balanced to be in the relationship, right? Because we can even see from the example that I used with my fear of commitment, by working through those questions within myself, I actually created a space where I could relate to another man who might be willing to have an experience like that with me in a much more balanced way, right? Because I'm willing to have the conversations that I know would be important for me to have before I make a decision like that. So this has been really fun for me. I really like this activity. I'll be working some other items on my list as I go through the coming days, and if you'd like to just subscribe to my channel, I'm sure that I'll give an update on one of these pick-a-card intros about whether or not I have scheduled with the mechanic and got my car in to start her loving care. Alright, let me know how it went for you. See you in the next one.